We like to think that we're excellent judges of character. I know that I think that I am. We believe, that if someone were lying to our faces for 2 weeks, we'd see the cracks. But the reality of the game show The Traitors suggests otherwise. And what's happening is very smart, very observant people consistently overlook the obvious. We're watching from beyond and we're going, oh no, can't you see that? Excuse the blatant. They excuse blatant slip ups. And really, they hand over sums of money to the very people that they're supposed to banish. So I was thinking, is this just bad gameplay? Because some people think that, you really need to know how to play this game in order to win it. Or is it a fundamental glitch in the human brain, which is the work that I look at? So today we're looking at the neuroscience of instant friendship because that really stood out for me, how people believe that they form trusting bonds within a matter of a couple of weeks or however long they're there. The game theory of final circle, I'll explain that. And then really why your brain is actually evolved to lose this game. So let's dive in. Hey there, lovely people. Thanks for watching from wherever you are today. Quick favor before we get going, tap that like button, say hi in the comments, and of course, subscribe with the little bell so you don't miss anything. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, hit auto download so every new episode finds its way to you straight away. Let's dive in. In the show, we often hear the contestants saying, I say contestants, because it's a show. We often hear them saying, I know I've only known them for 10 days, but they're my best friend. They're my mate. He's my mate. And to a viewer, this looks like hyperbole. To a neuroscientist, I'm not a neuroscientist, but to a neuroscientist, it looks like an oxytocin surge. So when humans are placed in very high stress, isolated environments, and I talked about this in my Married at First Sight video. Go and watch that if you haven't seen it. Like the missions in this show, they're very high energy. The brain tends to release oxytocin and it facilitates social bonding. I touched upon that in my other video. This is an evolutionary survival mechanism. This is not new. It's not about gameplay. This is about biology, neuroscience, how the brain, the body works. So the thing is, though, oxytocin has this effect. It dampens the activity of the amygdala, your brain's fear center. So it reduces activity in the prefrontal cortex, and this is the area responsible for critical analysis. Hugely important in this game show. So when you bond with a traitor, you aren't just being nice. Your brain has neurologically categorized that person as kin, familiar, trusting. So once that happens, your ability to process suspicious behavior is physically impaired. So that's why you see what you see. You are quite literally blinded by your own biology. And this is one of the reasons why I felt compelled to make this video. I want to touch upon the halo effect and affective realism because many people don't talk about this. So once the brain decides it likes someone, it employs a series of shortcuts, I'll call it, cognitive biases. So first, there's the halo effect. So if a contestant is funny and kind and, appears to be caring and, looking after people or helpful during the day, the brain subconsciously assigns them as having a trait, funnily enough, of honesty. That's ironic. So you assume that because they are a good person in the kitchen, they've made you a cup of tea, that they must be a faithful in the game. And this leads to affective realism. So this is where a phenomenon like, where your feelings dictate your sensory perception comes into play to play in this game. So if you feel warmth toward a friend, and this happens a lot in childhood, if you look back at your school years, it's very quick. We form bonds quickly at school. Your brain may fail to even register their microexpressions of guilt or their shaking hands, shaky voice, the fact that they can't say a word without laughing. You don't see a liar. You see a friend who is just stressed. It's the game. So when a traitor makes, let's call it a mistake, you don't, because it isn't, but we can touch upon that in another video. It's not a mistake. Anyway, when a traitor makes a mistake, you don't use logic to investigate it. You use motivated reasoning to excuse it. This is used in interviewing sometimes. Anyway, or else I'll get off track. You find a way to make the evidence fit your friendship rather than letting the evidence break the bond. It's too stressful for you to break the bond. It's easier if you let it go. And this is why you do it. And this is where game mechanics can come in. So there's a common debate. Is the Traitors a game of skill or purely luck? Statistically, the faithful are at a massive disadvantage, more than they realize. So at the start of the game, a random vote has a very low probability, just at the start, of hitting a traitor. In this sense, finding a traitor early is often a result of input randomness or simple luck. However, the skill in this game isn't actually detective work. I know people think they're being a detective, but it isn't. It's what we would call in psychology social camouflage. And the most skilled players aren't those who find the traitors. They're the ones who actually manage their own threat level. To survive, you must be liked enough, just enough, to avoid banishment, but unremarkable enough, boring enough, side person enough to avoid murder. It is a delicate balance of information asymmetry. The traitors know everything. The faithful know nothing. Skill in this context, yeah, I'll say it that way because, well, you'll see in a second. Skill in this context is the ability to navigate that void without letting paranoia trigger your fight or flight response. So, because this is a game, paranoia will set in, whether they're aware of it or not. And this would happen in any game, tennis even. And let's jump ahead to the final fire pit. So this, interestingly enough, is about the prisoner's dilemma. So if you make it to the end, the game shifts from psychology to pure game theory. The final is a living version of the prisoner's dilemma. If two players reach the end, they face a choice: share or steal. While sharing feels like a moral choice, stealing is often the Nash equilibrium, the only move that protects you from being left with nothing. So you could ask yourself, why do people still choose to trust? I'm always fascinated. Even if I know what's going on, I still go, what are you doing? It's it's a simple one, I'm afraid. It's the sunk cost fallacy. I hated studying this in psychology. I hated it. But it is. After weeks of emotional investment, the brain finds it far too painful. alluded to this before, to admit it was wrong, to admit this is not your friend, and to vote out a friend at the end. At the last second, you have to admit that your judgment failed you for 20 days or however long they're there. And, most people would rather be betrayed and stay loyal than be right and admit they were fooled. The heartbreak that we see at the end, and I watched, it may have been New Zealand or Australia version, where the woman stood there crying her eyes out because the traitor had fooled her and got her to the end. She'd used her because she knew she was going to be faithful to the end. And she cried her eyes out. Isn't just about money, though. It's the moment cognitive dissonance, which we talk about a lot, where a player's internal model of friendship is literally shattered by the reality of the game's zero-sum nature. And we lose at this game because we're evolved to cooperate. This is how humans evolved. Our brains would rather belong to a group. This is why groups are so powerful, than be right and be isolated. The traitors prove that in a battle between logic and the biological need for connection, biology wins almost every time. And this is why a game like The Traitors, because it is a game, people tend to have moments of clarity when they go, this is just a game. And then it's gone again. That clarity quickly disintegrates. But this show is so fascinating because it is touching upon all of our psychological inputs and outputs, and it goes right directly to the core of our very being, which is to partner, to link with, to find kin, familiarity, something in common, something that relieves our fear of other people. I don't believe we're born with a fear of other people. I believe we're born with a natural sense of who and what can we trust, but a lot of it is learned. So nature, nurture, as we grow, our experiences, of course, inform how much we trust, how much we maybe fear deceit, being let down, having difficult feelings like betrayal. But if you join a game show, which, by the way, all of what I just spoke about plays into even the issue of you completing the application and then being chosen. So you could apply each and every one of the points that I mentioned to just that process. And the selection process, is that luck? Or is it cognitive dissonance? Is it selective bias? Case in point, the Australia, New Zealand shows each had psychics join. This is my first season watching this show, so I don't know if you've had psychics before, but you would already know that they're going to be voted out. And the psychics that they choose, I'm curious as to why they would even go on this show. It's incredible. As a medium myself, I would never go on a show like this. And just for many different reasons, but also if people know, of course they want you out. They don't want you to have what they assume is an unfair advantage. But there's a lot of discussion about whether our psychic abilities, mediumship, whatever, can be used for game and for personal gain. And a lot of us believe it can't be. If it could be, most people would use it. Or would they? I don't know. That's a whole nother video. But a game like The Traitors does touch upon the viewer watching because they're a viewer themselves, or they have been a viewer. They would have watched the show before they applied. As a viewer, they would already have biases about how to handle things, which isn't always helpful. The same would apply to why people who've been on game shows before. I know the US version has had people who've won other huge big game shows, which I haven't seen, of course. I say of course, but I haven't seen them. But why would they even go on? They're already pinned and pegged to be eliminated early. And a lot of that play, that is gameplay. That is gameplay because it's calculated. And one of the reasons why people, I believe, taking into everything I've just talked about, why they do apply is because of something else that we have as human beings. We don't believe we'll be the one to be eliminated so quickly and easily. And even if you have a plan, which is interesting, I don't know how people, we've seen these plans fail time and time again, but also the issue of ego. So we see that when barristers or when people in any type of, how do I say, I was going to say controlling profession, it's very difficult for some people to drop their monikers, their masks, because careers do present a mask in many ways. Masks aren't negative, by the way, just like fantasies aren't good or bad. But a lot of them struggle to keep that down or keep it in. We saw that in this season. We saw people crack because of what they used to do. That plays into it. And the most successful people, although I haven't, this isn't based upon any knowledge, I haven't looked any of this up, but I would assume, I'm thinking the most successful people will be the ones who perhaps thought about having a gameplay, but also being very aware that that could just go down, the river very quickly. And so leave it up to chance, if you believe in chance, or I don't know. I don't know because I haven't done the research. I'm just thinking. But I did feel compelled to do this today because we're not taking into account well, I don't believe a lot of people think about the fact that your biology makes a difference. And I talk about this all the time on this channel. And my channel has pivoted more about this because people are interested. And also because of the work that I do in helping professionals. I go into contracts with companies. I do a lot of that work to help people if they've come out of any kind of very difficult situation, especially in a workplace, work environment, sometimes while studying. You have people doing their PhDs, some people in med school, and they're really struggling because of the competition, because of a lot of what's happening, and it's affecting them biologically, which it would do. Some of the older people who go on these game shows do crack and they do go out quite soon and they do go out quickly because they've had years and years and years of um, experience that's built up their walls of what they believe to be true or right or spot on, and they run with that. And that's how we've evolved. That's who we've become as human beings. So games are interesting. I love playing games. This is a household of games. We've got every board game you can imagine. But I could win or lose. I grew up with a lot of people, or well, not a lot of people around me, but cousins who were competitive, people who were competitive. I didn't care. We were always taught, it doesn't matter. We were taught the old adage, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, just play, have fun. What we see in The Traitors is a game. But for many of you, these dynamics, the isolation, the mobbing, the constant second guessing, is a part of what you go through daily at work. It's your reality at work. And if you're tired of navigating this on your own, not having any support, and you want to understand the forensic taxonomy, is what I call it, of what you're experiencing, then join me in my community. It's the space where we move from inquisitive observers to informed survivors. And if you're curious about whether any of these situations has had an effect on you, download my Toxic Workplace Recovery Kit. It's free. It's in the link below. Thanks for watching. If you're ready for exclusive soul-nourishing content that you won't find anywhere else, become a subscriber on Apple Podcasts and Spotify to access ad-free episodes with special guided meditations and visualizations for calm and clarity, and bonus episodes on spiritual growth, personal growth, energy healing, and spiritual awakening. Join the inner circle and experience deeper self-discovery today. If you're into living with purpose, clarity, and soul, the Aligned Living newsletter is exactly what you need. I am genuinely obsessed with creating it. Every week, I share strategies that work, drawn from close to 30 years as a therapist and soulful living being, plus powerful insights into spiritual and personal growth. You'll get access to free resources like the Self-Alignment Journal, e-courses to support your growth and journey, guided meditations, discounts on events and courses, and tools to help you shift your energy, habits, and mindset, all free when you sign up. I am building this with heart and honesty, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. Head to the link in the show notes and join me today.